The quiet. Before the storm. It was a Tuesday night, exactly 72 hours before I was set to sign the final papers on our new house, that my fiancée, Chloe, looked me dead in the eye, took a deliberate sip of her Sauvignon Blanc, and told me, "Frank, you're just too nice." It hit me like a splash of cold water. We'd been together for 5 years, engaged for 1. I'd spent those 5 years believing that being a good man, dependable, generous, kind, was the reason she loved me. Now, apparently, it was my fatal flaw. "Too nice?" I asked, a slight, almost nervous laugh escaping me. "What exactly does that mean, Chloe? Did I not argue enough about the restaurant bill?" She didn't smile. She set her glass down, the sound ringing through the otherwise silent dining room. "It means," she sighed, running a hand through her perfectly styled blonde hair, "that I need a man who takes charge. Who has a bit of an edge. Honestly, Frank, you just make things too easy. And I don't think I can marry a man who makes things so easy." She said she was moving out that night. Said she was calling off the wedding. Said my excessive niceness was the problem. I didn't know it then, but the truth, the real, financial, and utterly heartbreaking truth, was waiting for me like a wrecking ball hidden just around the corner. For 5 years, our life was, by all accounts, a postcard. I'm a software engineer. Boring, maybe, but stable. I'd managed to put away a decent nest egg. Chloe was a freelance graphic designer, with a vibrant, magnetic energy that always drew me in. I loved her ambition, her quick wit, and the way she could effortlessly charm anyone. We had the classic modern setup, separate careers, shared goals. Except for one small detail. I was the one paying for about 80% of everything. We lived in a beautiful loft-style rental I found and paid for. Yes, I know. Too nice. 3 weeks prior. The house hunt, Frank. Look at this kitchen. Chloe had practically screamed, spinning around in the middle of our future gourmet kitchen. The house was perfect. 4 bedrooms, a stunning garden, and enough space for the home office she desperately wanted. I was already picturing us, 10 years down the line, kids running through the garden. I'd told my lawyer, my actual professional contract lawyer, a guy named David, that I wanted the deed to be in my name only, to protect my initial investment, but that I'd add Chloe's name after the wedding, once we had a proper post-nup. David had raised an eyebrow. "A post-nup, Frank? Most people do a prenup." "I know," I said, shrugging. "But it just feels unromantic to bring it up now. She trusts me. I trust her." David just sighed. A sound I now realize was the professional equivalent of, "You absolute idiot." But he did his job. The deed and all initial paperwork were firmly in my name. The closing date was set for Friday. The seeds of betrayal. Chloe moved out that Tuesday night. Just packed 2 bags, grabbed her cat, the expensive, purebred one I had bought her, and disappeared into a friend's apartment. I spent day 1 in a fog. I called my best friend, Mike. "She said I'm too nice, Mike. Can you believe it?" Mike, ever the realist, responded, "It sounds like she's looking for an easy out, Frank. Too nice is code for I don't want to feel guilty about what I'm doing next." That comment, strangely, snapped me back to the logical world. My shock started morphing into a cold, hard curiosity. Why now? Why 3 days before we finalized a $250,000 commitment? 3 days later, the house and the lawyer. It was Friday, the day of the closing. I was in David's office, signing the final mortgage documents, my hand shaking slightly. I told him about the breakup. David leaned back in his leather chair. "Frank, this might be a blessing in disguise. Legally, you dodged a bullet. The house is entirely yours. You kept her off the deed. You've protected your assets. That's the silver lining, I guess," I muttered. "But it feels pretty tarnished." Then, David mentioned something that didn't quite track. "Look, this is highly unusual. Her lawyer called me yesterday. A woman named Patricia Chen. She demanded to know why Chloe's name wasn't on the deed. She was quite aggressive." I blinked. "Her lawyer? Chloe has a lawyer? For a breakup? We're not married. There are no kids. We don't have joint accounts. She preferred to keep hers separate, remember? What would she need a lawyer for?" David pulled up an email on his screen. Her lawyer claimed that Chloe had significantly contributed to the house purchase through emotional labor, time investment, and future plans, and was threatening to file an injunction to halt the sale until she was given a 50% equity stake in the property, based on a verbal agreement she claims you made. I stared at the screen, a sick feeling rising in my throat. My fiancée, the woman who had cried happy tears in that kitchen, had secured legal representation before she even told me she was leaving. The too nice excuse wasn't about my personality. It was a smokescreen for a calculated, legal ambush. The revelation 1 week later, the paper trail. I hired a private investigator. Not for a cliché, is she cheating? Reason, but because I needed to know the timeline. If she'd lawyered up before telling me, how long had she been planning this? The PI came back quickly, not with photos of her in a secret lover's arms, but with financial records that changed everything. It turned out that for the past 6 months, while I was meticulously saving for the deposit, Chloe had been having serious financial troubles. Her freelance design business wasn't doing well. In fact, she had quietly accrued over $30,000 in credit card debt. The real kick in the teeth came from her bank statements. The house fund. For the last year, I'd been transferring $2,000 a month into a joint house renovation savings account. Chloe was meant to be contributing $500. She hadn't. Worse, I found a pattern. Exactly 48 hours after my deposit hit, she was withdrawing all of it to service her own personal debts. The account was now empty. The lawyer. The retainer payment to Patricia Chen? A $5,000 transfer from a loan she had taken out, clearly marked on her bank statement, dated 2 weeks before she broke up with me. The plan was chillingly clear. She knew she was in financial trouble. She saw the house as her escape hatch, a 5-year, zero-effort investment that was about to pay off with a massive chunk of debt-free equity. My niceness, my desire to protect her by keeping her off the deed initially, had inadvertently stopped the scheme cold. Too nice meant too gullible to see I'm using you for financial security. Day 10, the confrontation and the negotiation. David, my lawyer, was ecstatic. This is a slam dunk, Frank. Her lawyer is claiming verbal agreement and emotional investment. We have bank records showing she siphoned off renovation funds and took out a loan to pay her lawyer. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a failed civil fraud attempt. I didn't want a drawn-out court battle. I just wanted her gone. We set up a meeting with her lawyer, Patricia Chen. Chloe was there, looking surprisingly composed. We're simply trying to resolve this amicably, Frank, Chen started, her voice sounding like expensive silk. Chloe is entitled to the value of her contribution to the relationship, which we estimate at $50,000. I interrupted. I couldn't help it. I didn't raise my voice. I just spoke with a level of calm that unnerved everyone in the room. I knew you'd be difficult. Difficult. I opened a binder. Page 1. Here are the bank statements showing you withdrew every cent I put into our joint renovation account to pay down your credit cards. Page 2. Here is the $5,000 transfer from your new personal loan to Ms. Chen's firm. This isn't a breakup, Chloe. This was an organized attempt to commit equity theft. Her face went from composed to ashen. I looked at her lawyer. Ms. Chen, I can either take Ms. Smith to court for the full amount of the fraudulently taken renovation funds, plus interest, and attach all of this evidence to the public record. Or you can agree right now to drop the injunction, sign a mutual release, and keep all of this quiet. The silence was deafening. Chloe was staring at the floor. Ms. Chen, a seasoned professional, saw the game was over. She saw the paper trail and the intent. She knew a judge would eat Chloe alive. Let me speak with my client, Frank. 4 hours later, the mutual release. I walked out of the law office with a signed mutual release agreement. Chloe dropped her claim to the house and any assets. I agreed not to pursue the civil case for the renovation funds, essentially letting her keep the $24,000 she had taken, a painful loss, but a small price to pay for my peace and the protection of my $100,000 deposit in the house. It wasn't a win. It was a costly retreat. Reflection and the lesson learned. 3 months later, the new normal. I'm sitting on the deck of my new house, the one I own, I paid for, and I moved into alone. It's quiet. Sometimes, too quiet. The emotional fallout was immense. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that my fundamental belief that being kind, generous, and trustworthy was enough was exactly what made me vulnerable. The too nice excuse wasn't about my lack of edge. It was about my lack of boundaries and due diligence. I learned that niceness without vigilance is foolishness. I had allowed her to keep her finances separate because I thought it was respectful of her independence. In reality, it was a blind spot she used to run up debt and then planned to steal my assets. I didn't want a prenup because it felt unromantic. That single romantic decision almost cost me my entire financial future. The real reason she left me wasn't that I was too nice. The real reason she left me was because she was financially desperate and believed I was naive enough to let her walk away with half a house she hadn't paid for. She thought my heart would blind me to the logistics of her deceit. She needed to leave me before the closing, because adding her name to the mortgage and deed would have required her to contribute, or at least be financially liable. She wanted the asset without the debt. She wanted the reward without the risk. And when she saw the paperwork was in my name and the easy theft was blocked, she panicked and used the too nice lie as a quick exit strategy before I caught her in the act. I saw her once in a coffee shop downtown. She looked thinner, and the magnetic energy was gone. She didn't look up. I didn't approach her. There was nothing left to say. I'm dating again now. Slowly. My new rule is simple. I'll still be nice. But I'm also going to be vigilant. My heart is open, but my eyes are wide open, and my lawyer is on speed dial. The end of that 5-year relationship shattered my heart, not because of the love lost, but because of the trust betrayed by someone I thought was my partner. It was a $24,000 lesson on the cost of blind trust. And now, every time I hear a story about a quick breakup right before a major life event, I can't help but ask myself, is this about love or is this about leverage? I'll let you decide on that one. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one.